Chapter 18. The Final Chapter of the Defiant Agents. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by R.J. Davis. The Defiant Agents by Andre Norton. Chapter 18. They lay along the rim of a vast basin, a scooping out of earth so wide they could not sight its other side. The bed of an ancient lake, Travis speculated, or perhaps even the arm of a long dried sea. But now the hollow was filled with rolling waves of golden grass, tossing heavy heads under the flowing touch of a breeze, with the exception of a space about a mile ahead where round domes, black, gray, brown, broke the yellow of an irregular oval around the globular silver bead of a spacer. A larger ship than that which had brought the Apaches, but of the same shape. The horse herd to the west. Nolan evaluated the scene with the eyes of an experienced raider. Taché, Deklay, you take the horses. They nodded and began the long crawl which would take them 2 miles or more from the party to stampede the horses. To the mongrels in these dome-like yurts, horses were wealth, life itself. They would come running to investigate any disturbance among the grazing ponies, thus clearing the path to the ship and the Reds there. Travis, Jill, and Buck, armed with the star guns, would spearhead that attack, cutting into the substance of the ship itself until it was a sieve through which they could shake out the enemy. Only when the installations it contained were destroyed might the Apaches hope for any assistance from the Mongols, either the outlaw pack waiting well back on the prairie or the people in the yurts. The grass rippled and the Jinta poked out a nose, parting stems before Travis. The Apache beamed an order, sending the coyotes with the horse raiding party. He had seen how the animals could drive hunted split horns. They would do as well with the ponies. Kaydessa was safe. The coyotes had made that clear by the fact that they had joined the attacking party an hour earlier. With Eskelta and Manuelito, she was on her way back to the north. Travis supposed he should be well pleased that their reckless plan had succeeded as well as it had. But when he thought of the Tatar girl, all he could see was her convulsed face close to his in the ship corridor, her raking nails raised to tear his cheek. She had an excellent reason to hate him, yet he hoped. They continued to watch both horse herd and domes. There were people moving about the yurts, but no sign of life at the ship. Had the Reds shut themselves in there, warned in some way of the 2 disasters which had whittled down their forces? Ah, Nolan breathed. One of the ponies had raised its head and was facing the direction of the camp, suspicion plain to read in its stance. The Apaches must have reached the point between the herd and the domes, which had been their goal. And the Mongol guard, who had been sitting cross-legged, the reins of his mount dangling close to his hand, got to his feet. Ah! The ancient Apache war cry that had sounded across deserts, canyons, and southwestern Terran plains to ice the blood ripped just as freezingly through the honey-hued air of Topaz. The horses wheeled, racing up slope away from the settlement. A figure broke from the grass, flapped his arms at one of the mounts, grabbed at flying mane, and pulled himself up on the bare back. Only a master horseman could have done that, but the whooping rider now drove the herd on, assisted by the snapping and snarling coyotes. Deklay, Julie identified the reckless rider. That was one of his rodeo tricks. Among the yurts, it was as if someone had ripped up a rotten log to reveal an ant's nest and sent the alarmed insects into a frenzy. Men boiled out of the domes, the majority of them running for the horse pasture. 1 or 2 were mounted on ponies that must have been staked out in the settlement. The main war party of Apaches skimmed silently through the grass on their way to the ship. The three who were armed with the alien weapons had already tested their range by experimentation back in the hills, but the fear of exhausting whatever powered those barrels had curtailed their target practice. Now they snaked to the edge of the bare ground between them and the ladder hatch of the spacer. To cross that open space was to provide targets for lances and arrows, or the superior armament of the Reds. "A chance we can hit from here." Buck laid his weapon across his bent knee, steadied the long barrel of the burner, and pressed the firing button. The closed hatch of the ship simmered, dissolved into a black hole. Behind Travis, someone let out a yammer of a war whoop. "Fire! Cut the walls to pieces!" Travis did not need that order from Jil-Lee. He was already beaming unseen destruction at the best target he could ask for, the side of the sphere. If the globe was armed, there was no weapon which could be depressed far enough to reach the marksman at ground level. Holes appeared, irregular gaps and tears in the fabric of the ship. The Apaches were turning the side of the globe into lacework. How far those rays penetrated into the interior, they could not guess. Movement at one of the holes. The clattering burst of machine gun fire splattered the soil and gravel into their faces. They could be cut to pieces by that. The hole enlarged, a scream, cut off. "They will not be too quick to try that again," Nolan observed with cold calm from behind Travis's post. Methodically they continued to beam the ship. It would never be spaceborne again. There were neither the skills nor materials here to repair such damage. "It is like laying a knife too fat," Lupe said as he crawled up beside Travis. "Slice, slice." "Move!" Travis reached to the left, pulled at Jil-Lee's shoulder. Travis did not know whether it was possible or not, but he had a heady vision of a combined firepower cutting the globe in half, slicing it crosswise with the ease Lupe admired. They scurried through cover just as someone behind yelled a warning. Travis threw himself down, rolled into a new firing position. An arrow sang over his head. The Reds were doing what the Apaches had known they would, calling in the controlled Mongols to fight. The attack on the ship must be stepped up, or the Amerindians would be forced to retreat. Already a new lacing of holes appeared under their concentrated efforts. With the gun held tight to his middle, Travis found his feet, zigzagged across the bare ground for the nearest of those openings. Another arrow clanged harmlessly against the fabric of the ship a foot from his goal. He made it in, over jagged metal shards which glowed faintly and reeked of ozone. The weapon's beams had penetrated well past both the outer shell and the wall of installation webbing. He climbed a second and smaller break into a corridor enough like those of the western ship to be familiar. The red spacer, based on the general plan of the alien derelict ship as his own had been, could not be very different. Travis tried to subdue his heavy breathing and listen. He heard a confused shouting and the burr of what might be an alarm system. The ship's brain was a control cabin. Even if the Reds dared not try to lift now, that was the core of their communications lines. He started along the corridor, trying to figure out his orientation in relation to that all-important nerve center. The Apache shoved open each door he passed with one shoulder, and twice he played a light beam on installations within cabins. He had no idea of their use, but the wholesale destruction of each and every machine was what good sense and logic dictated. There was a sound behind. Travis whirled, saw Jil-Lee, and beyond him Buck. "Up?" Jil-Lee asked. "And down," Buck added. "The Tatars say they have hollowed a bunker beneath." "Separate and do as much damage as you can," Travis suggested. "Agreed." Travis sped on. He passed another door and then backtracked hurriedly as he realized it had given on to an engine room. With the gun he blasted two long lines, cutting the fittings into ragged lumps. Abruptly the lights went out. The burr of the alarms was silent. Part of the ship, if not